Today, we're taking a deep dive into some really cutting-edge cancer immunotherapy research, specifically a newly identified immune checkpoint called B7-H4.
Oh, wow.
You shared an article with us from Assay Genie titled B7-H4, A New Frontier in Immune Checkpoint Inhibition, and I have to say, I'm very curious to see where this takes us.
Well, it's definitely a hot topic in the world of oncology right now.
Yeah.
B7-H4 is really, it's really changing the game when it comes to how we think about personalized cancer treatment. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Before we get into the specifics of B7-H4, though, could you give us a quick rundown of what cancer immunotherapy is and where immune checkpoints fit into the picture for some of our listeners who might not be familiar?
Yeah, of course. So in the simplest terms, cancer immunotherapy is all about empowering the body's own immune system to fight cancer cells.
Okay.
Now, immune checkpoints are like regulators on our immune response.
Right.
They're there to prevent overactivation, which is essential for stopping the immune system from attacking our own healthy cells.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the immune system's off switch, so to speak?
Exactly.
Okay.
But in the case of cancer, some tumor cells have evolved this cunning ability to kind of like flip that off switch, essentially hiding from the immune system.
Oh, wow.
So that's where these checkpoints, unfortunately, become a bit of a double-edged sword.
Okay, so that's how those cancer cells can kind of evade the immune system. Now, where does B7-H4 fit into all of this?
So B7-H4, it belongs to the B7 family of proteins,
Okay.
and it's turning out to be a pretty powerful immune checkpoint, especially in certain cancers. And what makes it a little bit different from some of its other family members is that, unlike other family members that are often found on immune cells, B7-H4 can actually be expressed by the tumor cells themselves.
Interesting. So it's like these cancer cells have this extra layer of camouflage, making them even harder to detect.
Precisely. And that's not all. B7-H4, what it does is it binds to specific receptors on T cells, which, as you know, are the kind of, the heavy hitters of the immune system when it comes to fighting cancer.
All right.
And this binding, what it does is it inhibits T cell activation and proliferation, effectively suppressing the immune response against the tumor.
So it's not just about hiding, it's about actively disarming the immune system.
Exactly.
That's fascinating and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. It is remarkable how adaptable cancer cells can be.
Yeah.
But this is where the research on B7-H4 gets really exciting because scientists are now working on ways to actually block B7-H4, to release those brakes and allow the immune system to do its job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that B7-H4 is particularly important in certain types of cancer. Which one should we be most interested in?
That's a great question. B7-H4 is often found in higher levels in aggressive and hard-to-treat cancers like ovarian cancer, triple-negative breast cancer, and certain types of lung cancer.
Oh.
So this kind of suggests that targeting B7-H4 could be particularly beneficial for patients with these cancers.
So by understanding the role of B7-H4 in specific cancers, we can potentially tailor treatments for better outcomes.
Exactly, yeah. This is where the potential for personalized medicine really comes in.
Now, the article you shared mentioned an antibody called MIH43 that specifically targets B7-H4. Can you tell us more about how that works?
Sure. MIH43, what it does is it's designed to bind directly to B7-H4.
Okay.
And by doing so, it prevents it from interacting with those T cells. And this, in turn, blocks the inhibitory signals from B7-H4, effectively, taking the brakes off the immune response.
Wow.
Yeah.
So MIH43 swoops in and blocks B7-H4,
Yeah.
essentially allowing the immune system to, see and attack those cancer cells more effectively.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And preclinical studies using MIH43 are showing, remarkable potential in several cancer models. And what's particularly interesting is this synergistic effect that's been observed when MIH43 is combined with other existing immunotherapies.
You're talking about combination therapies, right? The article touched upon that briefly. What can you tell us about those?
Right. So, for example, combining MIH43 with anti-PD-1 therapies, which target another immune checkpoint,
Right.
seems to significantly enhance the overall response.
Wow.
So these combinations could be, really game changers for patients with those hard-to-treat cancers.
Yeah, that's really promising to hear.
Yeah.
But I imagine, as with any new therapy, there are still challenges to overcome before, B7-H4 targeted treatments become widely available.
Sure.
What are some of the hurdles that researchers are facing?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is identifying the right patients for this type of therapy
Okay.
because not all cancers express B7-H4 at the same levels.
Right.
So figuring out which patients are most likely to benefit is, absolutely crucial.
So it comes down to kind of personalizing treatment based on individual tumor characteristics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
that makes sense. How are researchers approaching this challenge?
Well, biomarkers are key here.
Okay.
Researchers are actively looking for, specific molecules or genetic signatures
Right.
in tumors or the blood that can reliably predict a patient's response to B7-H4 targeted therapies.
Can you give an example of a biomarker and how it might be used in this context?
Sure, so take PD-L1, for instance.
Okay.
It's a protein that's often found on the surface of tumor cells, and higher PD-L1 levels are associated with a better response to anti-PD-1 therapies.
Okay.
So similarly, identifying a reliable biomarker for B7-H4 expression could help oncologists select the most effective treatment for each patient.
That makes perfect sense. Tailoring treatments based on an individual's tumor profile?
Right.
That's the future of oncology, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This is what we call precision medicine. And B7-H4 research is, pushing us closer to that goal.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I imagine some of our listeners might be wondering how this research directly impacts them.
Sure.
What would you say to someone listening who's thinking, okay, this is all well and good, but what does it mean for me?
Yeah, no, it's a very valid question. And, while these findings are incredibly exciting, it's important to remember that much of this research is still in its early stages.
Of course, yeah.
Most of what we've discussed today comes from what we call preclinical studies,
Right.
meaning they've been conducted in, laboratory settings or animal models.
So the next step is to confirm these findings in human trials.
Exactly.
Right.
Clinical trials are already underway to evaluate the safety and efficacy of B7-H4 targeted therapies in humans.
Okay.
And these trials will provide, really crucial information about potential side effects and, most importantly, how well these therapies work in, real-life patients.
So the research is progressing, and hopefully we'll have those more definitive answers in the near future. In the meantime, is there anything our listeners can take away from this deep dive on B7-H4?
Well, I think one big takeaway is really the incredible pace at which this field is moving.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few years ago, B7-H4 wasn't even on the radar as a potential target for cancer therapy, and now here we are talking about personalized treatments and combination therapies. So,
It's remarkable how quickly these discoveries can translate into potential treatments.
yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the idea of personalized treatments a little bit earlier. Could you elaborate on how B7-H4 research might shape the future of personalized cancer care?
Sure. So imagine a scenario where a patient is diagnosed with cancer, and one of the first steps is to analyze their tumor for B7-H4 expression levels,
Okay.
right? And then, based on that information, oncologists could then determine if a B7-H4 targeted therapy, either alone or in combination with other treatments, would be the most effective course of action.
It'd be like creating a personalized treatment plan, kind of, based on the unique fingerprint of each tumor.
Exactly. And this approach could potentially, improve treatment outcomes, minimize unnecessary side effects, and ultimately lead to, just better patient care overall.
That's an incredibly powerful vision for the future of cancer treatment. It seems like B7-H4 is just one piece of a much larger puzzle when it comes to, really understanding and treating cancer.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. This deep dive has only just scratched the surface of B7-H4 research.
Right.
There's still so much more to uncover, but each new discovery, it brings us closer to a future where cancer is no longer, a death sentence, but a manageable condition.
It's certainly an exciting time to be following all of the advancements in cancer immunotherapy, and I, for one, am very hopeful for the future. Thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the world of B7-H4. It's clear that this is a field with immense potential, and we're eager to see what the future holds.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a glimpse into the cutting edge of cancer research. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay curious, and remember that knowledge is power.